Hey everybody, it's Michael J. Today I'm going to show you some of my program collection, Broadway playbills, and some of them aren't that pretty. I saved the pretty ones, the gorgeous ones, the ones that were like little pieces of art. The ones I love the best are from this guy, and this is a book of his stuff, of theater posters of James McMullen. James McMullen is brilliant. Look at that. This is what he does for every poster. So, I'm also going to show you some other ones that are interesting, but I'm starting with that since I have Nikolai and the others, this is what it looks like. It's a dancer. His show isn't that good, but it's interesting, and nobody else is going to be able to do it. And when I say that, I work for a licensing house. I license theatrical properties, and so I'm always thinking, are people going to do this show in the future once it's done on Broadway? And this is one where I don't think they're going to be able to, because you have to recreate a George Balanchine ballet in the second half, which was beautiful, but who are you going to get to do that in your local community theater, high school theater? And then it's got 20 people in it, and most of them don't have anything to do, and so it's just not that great. But the poster is great. Now here's an interesting example of James McMullen, because this is from the recent play The Nance, probably my favorite play on Broadway this past season, and Nathan Lane is there, and it's a photograph of him in makeup with lights behind. It takes place during the burlesque period in the 30s, and there's, in his dressing room, there is a theater poster of him as his character, the Nance, in the burlesque show, and the poster is done by James McMullen. And because this is a show produced by Lincoln Center, James McMullen had to be a part of it, didn't he? Well, he should be, because he's really my favorite. He does posters like old-time posters used to be for Broadway. They were little works of art. They said the title, they have the important producing information at the bottom, and there's a picture of some sort that really said something about the show. And so one is The New Century, a really funny play. Well, actually, a couple of different one-act plays by Paul Rudnick. Very funny guy. If you don't know his plays, he wrote Jeffrey, and there's a film version of that. Also, Addams Family Values, the second Addams Family movie, which is hysterical. Paul Rudnick. Paul Rudnick should have done the book for the Addams Family musical, which was hideous, but he didn't. So this is The New Century. Really great. Linda Lavin was in it, and she was just about one of the most funny people I've ever seen in my life in this thing. Alright, okay, the South Pacific poster. Pretty good. It was amazing when it was huge over at Lincoln Center. South Pacific. It's amazing because it's got the guys, the sailors, it's got Nellie Forbich in her famous sailor outfit, which is like an iconic, quintessential sort of thing about South Pacific. So that's there, and it's just so beautiful, all the colors. Love it. See, everything's at the Vivian Beaumont Theater, too, which is my favorite space. It's a huge thrust space, but it can do, things can come out of the floor. Huge, full three-dimensional realized sets can come out of the wings from the back. I'm going to show you a program from Dinner at 8 later where that happened like 5 times. I thought, where's it coming from? Because the old Broadway theaters don't have that much wing space. They have to be really creative. That's why so much stuff comes out of the floor now, because there's no room for it. And or you have to fly in drops. That's what all they used to do, was wing in drops, and there wasn't a lot of room for much else. This is Light in the Piazza. I went to see this 6 times. The only other thing I went to see 6 times was Billy Elliot, because I had to see all the Billies. But this is Light in the Piazza, and it was wonderful. And it's one of those shows, again, like it's hard for people to do. It's half of it's in Italian, and it's a string-heavy show with the orchestra pit, and just to do it right, you know, I think it's hard. It's not hard on the scenery. That was simple, but it's not exactly fun, but it's lovely. So I don't know, people should do it. The public doesn't know what they want until you give it to them. Remember that, producers. Don't always be doing the Music Man. Nothing against the Music Man, but come on. We've seen the Music Man and The Sound of Music. And it's time for a little Light in the Piazza instead. That's all I'm saying. Awake and Sing, Clifford Odets, and this is Pablo Schreiber. That's Liev Schreiber's little brother, and he was awesome. And he is standing tall as like this ghostly version of himself, standing on a table with his family surrounding him, and that's lovely. It's, you know, here it is, dinner at 8. But I love this because this guy's like a ghost. Like, you're seeing the lady looking through this guy, and he's like half a man, and it looks like Picasso. So I love this one. I'm going to show you this because this is Cabaret. This is an anomaly because for a while, maybe they're still around, but there was a competing program around 2000 called Spiderman, and some of the shows, a lot of off-Broadway shows, used Spiderman instead of Playbill. And I was ushering at Studio 54 when I first came to New York as an usher, and the musical Cabaret was running, and I did that for a year. And people would complain that it wasn't a playbill, that it was a stage bill. They said, "What is this? Where's my playbill?" It's essentially a playbill, but it's a stage bill. This thing was just adorable, and hardly anybody saw it. It didn't run very long. It's not handled by a licensing house. We, at Music Theater International, where I work, we had it for like 2 seconds, and for some reason it got pulled, and now nobody's handling it, but it's the most beautiful little show. But he was a great dancer in it. He was an okay singer. He passed with the singing, but his personality was great, and the dancing was amazing. He was sharp. He kept up with all of the dancers who've been dancing since they were little kids. And then in came Nick Jonas. I had to go back to see what this kid was going to do. Nick Jonas is the Jonas brother who was on Broadway a lot, and when I first moved here, he was like playing Chip. He was a little boy. It's weird. I don't feel like I've been in New York that long, but all of a sudden it seems very long when this person's an adult and he was a little boy when I moved here. And he sang it beautifully. His singing is amazing in it. Beautiful, beautiful voice, this guy. Legitimate voice. It's not just a rock teeny bopper voice. It's like a great voice. And he could dance well enough. He wasn't as good of a dancer as this guy, Harry Potter. But Nick Jonas was good, and he had actually a more interesting, well-thought-out character. I always think this Finch character is a little bit of a kook, a little off his rocker, or he wouldn't have the guts to do everything that he does, and he was sort of playing that. It was really impressive, I have to say. And the funny thing about the playbill is that during that first version, it was little words, Spider-Man, turn off the dark. So it was hardly Spider-Man, but it was really called Turn Off the Dark. But here's the new program. So, old program, new program. Now it's called Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark, instead of Spider-Man, Turn Off the Dark. I used to teach back at the California Musical Theater. I used to teach there, lots of different programs, and I was a visiting artist in the schools, and I had kids there. It was at a condensed period of time, like a 3-year period when I was doing this. And those kids that were teenagers at that time that I had, a lot of them I had a lot of time with. And they're all 30 years old now, which is scary. And most of them are out working in the theater, or films, or what have you. This is The Woman in White, a big flop musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber that had one of my kids, Courtney Glass, in it. So I say this because she's in there. Now this is a friend, Jeffrey Carlson. I was doing directing shows with all these kids from UC Davis, these college kids, and they started a theater called Theater Zoe that they would do in the summertime when they weren't in class, obviously, in school. And one of those kids was Jeffrey Carlson. And then after Davis, he went to Juilliard. And after Juilliard, he went right on to Broadway to do Edward Albee's The Goats. And he's been working ever since. My friends Rob Hillman and David McMullen, their relation to this guy, were both in La Boheme on Broadway, the Baz Luhrmann production, which was fantastic. And Rob's part, when you had the breakdown, if he had to be replaced ever, he was called Cute Boy, which he is. He's a cute, liked it. But it has a great poster. And one of my kids, I love him, is James Snyder. And James Schneider was from Sacramento, and I knew him when I was teaching all this stuff, but he wasn't really one of my acting students. He was in a class where I went into the school and did a program on Les Mis, about moving Les Mis from the novel to the stage, and it was tied into the national tour Les Mis coming through, and so it was one of those kind of deals. And he was my student there, but I really knew him because he was friends with all the kids I was teaching, and so I lump him in my mind as to one of the kids, but he's doing very well. And he was in Cry Baby, that was his Broadway debut, and then he disappeared from Broadway, but he's coming back to Broadway in a new show. I went to a show at the Met recently to see this man's paintings. He painted Boxers. It's a great painting, it's perfect, it's for Golden Boy. Golden Boy is another Clifford Odets play. It's wonderful, it's huge, it's like a musical, but it's not a musical. It was so beautifully done. And it's just one of the treasured things that I've seen, so I saved the program. And also it's a good-looking program. I never look at them, really. They're put away, so it was fun to bring them out and share them with you. And thanks for watching. Bye.